Salut à tous et bienvenue dans Story Series saison 2, épisode 9.
That's what I'm talking about.
Cette semaine, nous avons le bonheur d'accueillir Issa Rae, créatrice et star de Insecure, une chronique lumineuse racontant le quotidien d'une jeune afro-américaine et de son entourage à Los Angeles, dont la 3e saison s'est achevée sur HBO.
Oh, for real? That's crazy.
Adaptée de la web-série The Misadventures of Awkward Black Girl, créée en 2011, Insecure est parvenue à faire d'un récit communautaire une histoire universelle, aussi juste dans son message politique que dans l'authenticité de ses personnages.
Next level, honey, 'cause you next level.
Issa Rae était à Cannes, au Midcom, pour recevoir le prix de la personnalité de l'année. Rien que ça.
Hey.
Can you first tell me when did you feel you had a need in you to tell stories?
Definitely in college, when I was looking at the television landscape and felt that there was just a lack of representation of people that I knew in real life. And I wanted to just make movies and tell stories that reflected the experiences that I knew, my friends, and just showed Black people in a positive light at the time, because we had a lot of negative depictions. And, you know, I tried my best to do that.
And wait, is that Jay-Z and Beyonce? No, it's Amir, it's us, we cute.
I've always been questioning about the title Insecure, because to me it takes guts, not to say balls, to do what you do and to be the face and the writer, and I mean even on the web series format, to be, you know, the whole thing is on your shoulders. Mm-hmm. And when I read Insecure, I'm like, hell, she's the most secure person on earth. She has the guts of 100% in her.
Thank you for that compliment. You know, you don't feel that way. And I think this story is really about a journey to confidence, or to the best confident version you can be, which is where I feel like, you know, I'm still on that journey. You know, there's definitely more confidence than I had 5 years ago, and then 5 years ago before that. So it's an evolving process, but in terms of telling stories, I wanted to start at this place that we all feel at some point in our lives of, can I do this? Who am I? What am I supposed to be? What's expected of me? And those questions are all questions I've asked myself, and that this character is asking. And that's the perspective that I want to look at. And as we see her growth, I just want to see her answer those questions over time.
Hey, Mirror Bitch, you looking real clean. You looking real bad. You looking like a queen. It's been a long time. I shouldn't have left you, but I got a new spot. It's brand new, brand new.
Hey, it's locked.
Here I come. Don't you go nowhere, Mirror Bitch. Where I'ma go?
I always think when you have a character talking to a mirror, it means something. It means how personal it is. Is it why you have all those scenes?
For me, in the bathroom, like for anybody, like that's when you're your most raw, purest self. Like oftentimes you're nude, and that's, you know, who you are is who you see in the mirror is who you are, and whether you like what's reflected back is also so important. But in the show, it's the only place where she's truly honest with herself. She truly acknowledges her feelings. She's forced to look at who she is and kind of reckon with that. And that very much is in real life for me. It's just like when you're facing in that mirror, you have to decide, you know, who you want to be and whether you like who you see, and if you don't, you need to do something about it. And that's just the approach that I take.
Do you feel like your relationship to your own self and inner self has changed thanks to the show?
Yeah, I think thanks to creating, I think the show has definitely helped. But the moment I started finally doing what I felt like I was supposed to be doing, and doing what I said I would finally be doing, there's so many times when I've been like, oh, I'm gonna do this, it's gonna happen, woo, woo, and not doing it made me feel, you know, shitty. It made me feel like what's the point? Like I can't even keep promises to myself. So there's a natural confidence that comes from setting out to do something and actually doing it. And so to be able to do it in the way that you wanna do it is, you know, that takes your vision of yourself through the roof. There's power in that, and there's also, of course, fear, because if I'm in my own way, then I can't blame anyone but myself.
Well, if it's an issue for some people, maybe those people who it's an issue for should have spoken up.
Really? I have to speak up about every issue. Do you know how awkward that is? Hi, I'm Issa, and I'm black and angry.
We should all be angry.
And what's the problem? I represent the gays, and you represent black people.
Yeah, well, I don't want to be the voice of all black people.
Well, it is what it is.
I don't want to be the voice of every black people. Is there a reason why it comes in the 3rd season? Do you feel that this is something people are putting on your shoulder, or?
That's funny. I didn't think about the fact that it comes in the 3rd season, and that's something that I have really felt, you know, as the show has progressed. There is an expectation that I didn't think would come with the series. You know, I got asked that question a lot before the show premiered, like, do you feel like people will expect this to represent all black women? And I felt like optimistic, like, no, I don't think that people in this day and age with all the content that we have will expect that from this show, you know.
Has it changed the way you write it with your team of writers? This self-consciousness of people are expecting something from me?
Ooh, no, I try not to let it. You know, there's nothing like the 1st season in terms of writing within a vacuum. You know, you don't have an audience, you don't have any expectations.
Oh, Issa, you were so simple then.
2nd season, we felt the expectations that people wanted to place upon us and threw them out the window because we don't want to acknowledge it.
So you can do it.
You can, yes, and I prefer to, because you just don't want that pressure, and you don't want the audience to dictate the story that you set out to tell, because then it isn't your show anymore, it's theirs, and I just want to make sure that this stays our show.
Do you feel like your vision and your perception of television has changed now that you're in the middle of it, and the way you watch television today?
Absolutely. I do watch the way that writers approach certain storylines. I look at the makeup behind a room. You know, sometimes if I do see a storyline, I wonder, do they have any people of color behind this? Because I feel like the conversation would have been different, or it would have been reflected differently. You know, it's also a learning experience. I draw inspiration from a lot of television shows, just in terms of the subject matters that they're tackling, how effectively they tackle them, because that's another thing where I don't feel pressured to, you know, with the Me Too and Time's Up movement, there was just a lot of talk about, are we gonna tackle that within the show? And if it's not natural to us, I don't ever want anything to feel like a PSA or like, you know, just a commercial for this particular subject matter just to promote discussion or just to check off a box and say that we did it. Or even Black Lives Matter, I think that's inherent in our show, that it's obvious that Black Lives matter.
Okay, you got problems with white firms, you got problems with black firms, you're running out of races.
First of all, there are Mexican law firms too. I see them on the back of buses all the time.
Racist.
My point is, why do black businesses always have to be on the struggle?
I'm with Molly on this one. We have to do better. We can't just leave it all up to Chadwick Boseman.
Right? I mean, if you're gonna be a black law firm in Century City, then be a Century City law firm. It's like when black people buy big-ass houses and can't furnish it. Y'all know my uncle got an 8,000 square feet house and just a beanbag?
Okay, you're being mad judgmental right now.
So you started telling stories because the diversity was disappointing, and I feel it still is in a way. But do you feel like it's because I read you watch TV more than movies. Do you feel like diversity is being more considered on television today than in cinema?
Without a doubt. I think obviously within independent cinema, you can't control what people produce, so that feels more diverse. But on the mainstream cinema, no. Like, it's not. I think when you reference Black Panther, and that's like the only thing that you can reference as a phenomenon, or now Crazy Rich Asians, like you can count on your hands the number of mainstream successes or mainstream even films that have featured truly diverse casts and remained authentic in that way. Whereas television, it just feels like there's a priority now to tell those stories, and you have so many people behind the scenes dedicated to telling diverse stories.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you very, very much for this.
Why you talk like a white girl?
You caught me, I'm rocking blackface.
It's racist. Any other questions?
Pour Issa Rae, pas de doute, la télévision serait donc très en avance sur le cinéma au sujet de la représentation des minorités.
That is so cool.
A-t-il réellement explosé ces dernières années avec des séries phares comme Atlanta, Scandal, Blackish ou Insecure? Nous avons rencontré Jordan Minzer, journaliste au Hollywood Reporter, pour prendre un peu de recul et faire le point sur la question.
Il y a vraiment une longue histoire de la télévision afro-américaine aux États-Unis. Ça date même des années 50 qu'il y a la première sitcom, si on veut, de l'époque, avec des Africains-Américains à l'écran. Il y a un sitcom qui s'appelle Amos and Andy, qui date des années 50. Mais après, il y a une vraie explosion dans les années 70, grâce un peu à deux choses. Il y avait une mini-série qui s'appelle Roots, et qui parlait de l'esclavage, et qui était très populaire. Et à côté, il y avait l'explosion de sitcoms noirs. Et il y a notamment The Jeffersons, il y a Good Times, il y a Sanford and Son. Et c'était des sitcoms pas souvent écrits ou créés, si on veut, par des Noirs, mais quand même avec des acteurs et des comiques afro-américains.
Les Afro-Américains et la télévision, c'est donc une longue histoire d'amour. Qui remonte aux années 50 avec son lot de sitcoms, de réussites, mais aussi d'inévitables clichés. Et c'est peut-être là que se situe la vraie révolution télévisuelle des dernières années. Il ne s'agit plus seulement de représenter les minorités, mais de mieux les représenter.
Il y a toujours, même aujourd'hui, je crois, une image un peu négative de communauté noire aux États-Unis, que ce soit dans le clip vidéo d'hip-hop où on voit des ghettos, on voit des crimes, on voit la drogue, et on n'a pas énormément d'images positives, je trouve, pas assez en tout cas. Pour moi, le changement, c'est de montrer des Noirs qui sont arrivés à accéder à la classe moyenne ou même à la classe aisée aux États-Unis. Justement, toute l'idée de Blackish, c'est que qu'est-ce qui se passe quand on est noir, on est riche? Est-ce qu'on est toujours noir? Et l'idée, c'est black-ish. On n'est pas vraiment black, on est black-ish. On est un petit peu black.
A gap year is when a kid takes a year before going off to college. It's pretty common, actually.
Everyone that I know that's taken a gap year is some rich kid who turns out to be a ski bum.
Is this some white Everything around here is some white
Pops, it is not some white stuff. For the record, Malia Obama took a gap year.
You are not Malia Obama, fool!
Okay.
Ça parle et ça parle pas exactement des problèmes noirs. Je trouve que ça traverse quelque chose de plus universel, si on veut. Ça aurait peut-être pas pu être fait sans la présidence d'Obama, qui montre une certaine, comment on dit en anglais, normalité, normalcy de la communauté noire. Même dans des séries de Shonda Rhimes comme Scandal, voilà, c'est Kerry Washington qui joue, mais une femme très puissante à Washington, qui s'occupe de la com du président et qui est PR, qui contrôle ce genre de désastres. Mais c'est quand même, elle vit pas dans le ghetto du tout, justement, c'est une femme de pouvoir. Et donc c'est ça qui est la différence, c'est l'accès à l'argent et au pouvoir qu'on ne voyait pas avant.
You're asking me to believe that there is a secret CIA being controlled from the White House.
No, you're not getting it. This deep state intelligence agency is not controlled from the White House, it controls the White House.
Je pense que la différence aussi aujourd'hui, c'est que la télévision afro-américaine avant n'était pas créée, écrite et même réalisée par des Afro-Américains. C'était des Blancs qui faisaient ça. Alors qu'aujourd'hui, que ce soit Atlanta, Insecure, Blackish, en fait, là, on a des scénaristes noirs. Et donc, ils abordent ça aussi d'une autre manière, je crois. C'est eux qui parlent même à travers la télévision, alors qu'avant, ce n'était pas leur voix.
What? That's Hold on right there. Excuse me, sir. I know you don't know me, but I just tried to pay with 100, and they told... Wow. Okay, let's get out of here. Yeah.
Story Series, c'est terminé. La semaine prochaine, on fête le retour de 10% en prenant un cours d'écriture avec sa showrunneuse, Fanny Herrero, et ses scénaristes. On vous invite à prendre des notes.
Ça fait 10 ans que j'ai toujours le meilleur chiffre d'affaires de l'agence.
Ouais, sauf qu'un du jardin égale 2 canets.
Allez, à la semaine prochaine.
Bah, il va où le con? Moi, il a mis que de la mousse.